Anita! You were poisoning me in my own house? Sis Grace, please forgive me. Emeka said it was the only way. You wanted me gone so you could take my property? Now get out! Both of you, get out of my house!
I never thought the person handing me a glass of water could be the same person trying to put me in the ground. But life has a way of showing you the truth you were too trusting to see. My name is Grace, and this is the story of how I almost died in my own bed, in my own house, at the hands of someone I called family. It started on a Tuesday morning in March. I had just come out of surgery. Nothing life-threatening, the doctor said. A fibroid removal. Routine. Clean. I was told I would be back on my feet within 3 to 4 weeks if I rested well and took my medication as prescribed. My husband, Emeka, drove me home from the hospital. I remember leaning my head against the car window, watching the Lagos traffic crawl past, thinking about how lucky I was. Lucky to have survived the surgery. Lucky to have a home to return to. Lucky to have a husband who held my hand in the recovery room and whispered, "I'm not going anywhere." I believed him. We had been married for 9 years. We had a house in Lekki, 2 cars, and a piece of land in Enugu that my late father left me. We were not perfect, no marriages, but I thought we were solid. I thought what we had was real. So when Emeka suggested that his younger sister Anita move in to help take care of me while I recovered, I smiled and said yes. I had no reason to say no. Anita was 26. She was light-skinned, soft-spoken, and always smelling of that lavender body lotion she never went anywhere without. She had visited our house a few times before and had always been polite. She called me Sis Grace. She hugged me at Christmas. She once cried at my dining table when she had a problem with a boyfriend, and I gave her advice like an older sister would. I trusted her. That was my first mistake. The day she arrived with her bags, she walked straight to my bedroom, sat beside me on the bed, held my hand and said, "Sis Grace, don't worry. I'm here now. You just rest. I will handle everything." Her eyes were warm. Her voice was gentle. Her smile was soft. I looked at her and felt relieved. I did not yet know that the devil also smiles, that the most dangerous betrayals never announce themselves, that sometimes the person assigned to save you is the very one who has already decided to destroy you. That night, she brought me my first round of medication with a cold glass of water, arranged neatly on a small tray. She even added a slice of orange on the side because she said I needed vitamin C to heal faster. I took the pills, I drank the water, I ate the orange. I said, "Thank you, Anita. God bless you." She smiled, turned off my lamp, and closed the door softly behind her. The nightmare had already begun. I just did not know it yet. By the end of the first week, I noticed something was off. The doctors had told me I would feel weak for the first few days, then gradually stronger. That was normal, they said, expected. But by day 7, I was not getting stronger. I was getting worse. Every morning, I woke up feeling like something heavy was sitting on my chest. My mouth tasted metallic, like old coins soaked in water. My head pounded so hard sometimes that I had to close my eyes and press my fingers against my temples just to breathe through it. My hands trembled when I lifted a spoon. My vision blurred when I tried to read my Bible. I told Emeka. He said, "Grace, you just had surgery. Your body is adjusting. Give it time." I told him I felt nauseous almost every day. He said, "That's probably the medication. Side effects are normal." He called the hospital on my behalf, and the nurse confirmed that some of the medication could cause mild dizziness and nausea. So I accepted it. I told myself I was overreacting. I told myself I was being impatient. but something in my gut would not let me rest. There was a feeling I could not shake, something hollow and uneasy sitting at the bottom of my stomach, telling me quietly, firmly, that this was not normal, that this was not how a healing body behaved. I had had minor surgeries before. I knew what recovery felt like. It did not feel like this. It felt like I was drowning slowly, and every time I surfaced for air, something was pulling me back under. Anita was there every day, without fail. She woke up before me, prepared my meals, set out my medication, and sat with me in the evenings watching television. She was attentive in a way that felt almost rehearsed, too smooth, too consistent, too careful. One afternoon, I mentioned to her that I was not feeling better. She immediately placed her hand on my forehead, furrowed her brow, and said, "Sis Grace, I think you need to call your doctor again. Your body is probably just taking longer to heal. Every person is different." She sounded so concerned, so caring. I nodded. I said, "You are right." But that hollow feeling in my stomach grew heavier. That same evening, I overheard Emeka and Anita talking in the kitchen. Their voices were low, almost whispered, and when I shifted slightly in my bed to listen, I could only catch fragments. Something about time, something about be patient, and then laughter, soft, private laughter that did not sound like the laughter of a brother and his sister. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself my sickness was making me suspicious of innocent things. I pulled my blanket tighter around me and stared at the ceiling in the dark. But that night I could not sleep, not because of the pain, but because something deep inside me, something ancient and instinctive was screaming, and I was not yet brave enough to listen. It was a Thursday night, 11 days after Anita had moved in. I had woken up around 1 a.m. with a sharp cramp in my lower abdomen. I lay still for a few minutes, breathing through it, hoping it would pass. When it did not, I decided to go to the bathroom. The house was quiet. Emeka was asleep beside me, or so I thought, because when I turned, his side of the bed was empty, cold. I did not think much of it at first. Sometimes he went to the kitchen for water at night. I got up slowly, holding the bedpost for balance, and walked toward the hallway. That was when I saw it. The door to the guest room, Anita's room, was slightly open. A thin strip of yellow light fell across the hallway floor, and behind that door, I heard voices, low, hushed, intimate. My husband's voice and Anita's. I stood in the hallway and I could not breathe. My feet refused to move. My heart refused to accept what my ears were already telling me. I stood there in the dark for what felt like an eternity, listening to a truth I was not prepared to carry. I do not want to describe what I heard in detail. Some pain does not need to be dressed in words. What I will tell you is that it was enough. It was more than enough. I turned and walked back to my room. I sat on the edge of my bed. My hands were shaking, not from weakness this time, but from something fiercer, something colder, a rage I had no language for. But even then, even in that moment, I forced myself to think clearly. Do not react, not yet, think. The next morning, I watched Anita bring me my medication as usual. She placed the tray beside me, smiled her warm smile, and said, "Good morning, Sis Grace. How are you feeling today?" I looked at her face. I looked at the pills on the tray, and something clicked. Why was I getting worse? Why, after almost 2 weeks of rest and medication, was I weaker than the day I left the hospital? The doctors said I should be improving. My body said otherwise. I picked up the pills and held them in my palm, pretending to take them while she watched. I put my hand to my mouth. I swallowed the water, but the pills stayed hidden in my closed fist. That evening, when I was alone, I examined them. They looked identical to what I had been prescribed, but I could not be sure. not without proof. So I did something that saved my life. I wrapped one of the pills in a small piece of tissue paper, put it inside an envelope, and called my cousin Ngozi, a woman I trusted with my life, and asked her to come pick it up without telling anyone. I whispered to her on the phone, "Ngozi, I need you to take this to a lab. I need to know what is in it, please, and tell no one." Ngozi knew me well enough to hear the fear underneath my words. She did not ask questions. She came. She took the envelope. And now I had to wait. Those 3 days of waiting were the longest of my life. 3 days later, Ngozi called me. Her voice was different, tight, controlled, the kind of voice a person uses when they are trying to hold themselves together. "Grace," she said, "I need to come and see you." "Just tell me," I said. "I need to hear it now." There was a pause. Then she said, "There is a substance in that pill that is not supposed to be there. The lab found traces of a compound. They said it's not in your prescription. It's the kind of thing that over time," she stopped. "Say it, Ngozi." "Over time, it could cause organ damage. It could kill you, Grace, slowly, in a way that looks like natural deterioration." I sat in silence. Not because I was shocked. I think somewhere deep inside me, I already knew. That hollow feeling in my gut had been trying to tell me for days. My body had been trying to warn me. But hearing the words out loud cracked something open inside my chest. Tears came fast and hot, and I did not stop them. I cried for the woman who had been lying in her own bed, trusting the people she loved, while they slowly, deliberately tried to end her life. I cried, and then I stopped crying because I was still alive, and they did not deserve the luxury of my tears. Ngozi came over that evening. We sat together in my room with the door locked, and she held my hands while I told her everything. What I had heard in the hallway, what I had suspected, what the lab had confirmed. She listened without interrupting. When she finished, she looked at me with an expression I will never forget. It was not pity, it was fury. Quiet, burning fury. "What do you want to do?" she asked. "I want the truth," I said. "All of it. Before I do anything, I want to look Anita in the eyes and hear her say it." Ngozi shook her head. "Grace, I need to hear it," I said firmly. "I need to know how deep this goes." So we made a plan. The next morning, I told Emeka that Ngozi would be staying over for a few days to help with my care. He seemed uncomfortable with this. A flash of something crossed his face too fast for him to hide it. He said it was fine. That afternoon, while Emeka was out, I called Anita into my room. I asked her to sit down. She sat, smoothing her wrapper, perfectly composed, still wearing that lavender lotion. I looked at her for a long moment before I spoke. Then I said very quietly, "Anita, I know." Her expression did not change immediately, but her hands told the truth before her mouth could catch up. They tightened in her lap, just slightly, but I saw it. "Know what, Sis Grace?" she said, with a soft, confused smile. "I know what you have been putting in my medication. I know about you and my husband, and I know what the two of you planned." The smile fell from her face like a mask hitting the floor. The silence that filled that room was the loudest thing I have ever heard. Anita stared at me. I stared back, and for a moment, neither of us moved. Then she broke. Not dramatically, not with tears or screaming. She broke quietly, the way a dam cracks before the flood. A small shift in the face, a trembling in the jaw, and then everything collapsed. "How did you find out?" she whispered. "It doesn't matter," I said. "Tell me everything from the beginning." And she did. She told me that she and Emeka had been seeing each other for over 2 years, that it had started at a family gathering in Enugu when I was not there, that it had grown from something careless into something they had convinced themselves was real love. She told me that the plan to tamper with my medication had not come from her. It had been Emeka's idea. He had told her that if I died, the property my father left me in Enugu would pass to him as my husband, that they could sell it, move away, start fresh. He had researched what compound to use, he had purchased it, he had told Anita exactly what to do and how much to add each time she brought me my pills. As she spoke, I sat completely still. I did not cry, I did not shout. I felt something harden inside me. Not bitterness, but resolve. The kind of resolve that comes when a person understands fully what they have survived and decides with their whole soul that it will not be for nothing. When she finished, she looked at me with eyes that were wet but still calculating. "Grace, I am sorry," she said. "I was not thinking. He convinced me." "Stop," I said. She stopped. "Are you a grown woman?" I said. "You made a choice. Every day you walked into this room and handed me those pills, you made a choice. Do not insult me with excuses." She looked at the floor. I reached under my pillow and pulled out my phone. I pressed play. The entire conversation had been recorded. Her head snapped up. "Ngozi and I recorded everything," I said calmly. "I also have the lab reports and I have already spoken to a lawyer." She opened her mouth, closed it. "You should leave this house now before Emeka gets back, because what happens next I cannot protect you from." She left within 20 minutes, taking nothing but her bag and her lavender lotion. That evening, when Emeka returned home and found Anita gone, I was sitting in the living room waiting for him. He looked around the house, looked at me, and something shifted in his face, a flicker of panic he tried immediately to bury. "Where is Anita?" he asked. "Sit down, Emeka," I said. And I watched the man I had loved for 9 years realize in slow and terrible stages that his plan had not worked, that I was still alive, that I knew everything, and that it was already too late. I will not tell you that the days that followed were easy. They were not. Reporting your husband of 9 years to the police is not something a woman does without feeling something break inside her. Standing in a police station, handing over a lab report and a voice recording, and watching officers lead a man in handcuffs who once kissed your forehead and promised to love you, that is a grief with no proper name. But I did it. I did every single piece of it. Emeka was arrested that same night. Anita was picked up the following morning at her mother's house in Surulere. The charges were serious: attempted murder and conspiracy. The lawyer Ngozi had connected me with ensured that nothing was swept under a rug. The family meeting that followed was something I could not have prepared for. Emeka's mother sat in my living room and wept. His older brother, a pastor, kept saying, "This cannot be true, this cannot be true," like a prayer. But the evidence did not argue. The lab report did not care about anyone's feelings. The recording played, and every word in Anita's voice confirmed what I had said. The room was silent in the way that only deep shame can silence people. Emeka's mother turned to me with swollen eyes. "Grace, please, he is my son." I looked at her. I felt no malice toward her. She had not known, but I also felt no obligation to comfort her. "Mama," I said gently, "your son tried to kill me for a piece of land. The courts will decide what happens to him. That is no longer in my hands." Both Emeka and Anita were prosecuted. They did not escape consequence. In a country where many crimes go unpunished, I made sure this one did not. I had evidence, I had a lawyer, and I had the kind of quiet, immovable determination that only a person who has survived a deliberate attempt on their life can carry. Emeka lost everything he thought he was gaining. The Enugu property remained mine, my father's name was on that land, and no court was going to hand it to a man who had tried to poison his wife for it. He lost his freedom for a time. He lost the respect of his family. He lost the life he had built on my back. Anita lost even more in the ways that matter quietly. She lost her family's trust, her reputation, and the relationship she had destroyed everything for. Emeka, facing prison time and ruin, turned on her quickly. There was no loyalty between them in the end. There never had been. There was only greed dressed in the language of love. And me, I recovered. Slowly, then fully. Once the poisoned pills were gone from my body and I was given the correct medication, I improved week by week. My strength came back. My appetite returned. I slept through the night without waking up in pain. But the real healing was deeper than the physical. I learned in those months that I was stronger than I knew, that my instincts had been right every time and I had silenced them out of love and trust and the desire not to cause trouble in a room where someone was planning my funeral. I learned that surviving a betrayal that deep does not make you bitter, it makes you wise. It strips away every illusion you were using to comfort yourself and leaves only what is true. And what was true was this. I was still here. I was alive, and I was free. I sold the Lekki house. I kept the Enugu land. I moved into a smaller apartment in Yaba, painted the walls yellow, planted tomatoes on the balcony, and started over. Some people told me to be angry. Some told me to be afraid to trust again. Some told me I should have stayed quiet and forgiven privately to preserve the family name. I did none of those things. I chose to live loudly, gratefully, and without apology. The lesson I carry from everything I went through is this. When your body is telling you something is wrong, listen. When your instincts knock, open the door. Do not silence your own voice to keep peace in a room where someone is planning your funeral. You owe yourself the truth. You owe yourself survival. And if someone has ever tried to dim your light, know this. A flame that survives the attempt to extinguish it does not burn softer afterward. It burns brighter.